Welcome everyone that's here. We'll get started in about 4 minutes. Should be off. I'm going to give it 1 more minute and then we're going to get started. And to honor your time today.
Bill. Bill.
So can I ask one of the PSSs if you're on to just monitor the chat so that when we get to questions and answers, I don't miss things?
You got it, Dr. Muir.
Thank you so much, Chris. And also, we are recording, so this recording will be available afterwards for all of you that are here and for those that were unable to make it today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for coming to this meeting, and truly appreciate it that you're here. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thank you for that. I've got this thing going on where you can read what I'm saying, and I don't know how to turn that off, and it's sort of driving me a little bit crazy. But I'm going to turn it over to
Dr. Muir, if you'll leave that on, because we do have folks who need it.
okay,
So
then
don't-
I will
so-
leave it on. Okay,
Thank you.
I'll try not to look at it. So thank you so much, Superintendent Elder, and I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Elder to do a quick welcome for you all.
Yeah, this will be real quick because I know how excited you are to be here on basically your Friday afternoon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. You know, the most important thing we know is to keep kids in school, and this is a way to do it, and to keep staff in school. And here's a way to do it. We are struggling to find people to work, and if we can keep teachers and school staff in this building and district staff in the building, then we're in better shape, and we know it's better for our kids. So I know it's a lot. I know we're asking a lot, but I'm very thankful for you. And let's just get the training going, Chris, so that these guys can get on with their day. And if I don't get a chance to say it again, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holiday.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Elder. And as he said, this is a way to keep kids in school and hopefully staff working. So we're going to talk about the two testing programs in APS, and there's purpose for both of those programs. So the main purposes are to quickly identify and isolate individuals that are infected with COVID-19. It also will help facilitate safe in-person learning, and it will keep close contacts in school, at school, so those close contacts that are in school or at work, while managing the risk of the spread of the virus. So the APS testing programs are basically two things. One that you're very familiar with is the surveillance testing for employees. It's going to be now expanded also for students. So we'll have surveillance testing for both students and employees, and the new test to stay or modified quarantine. And I'm going to go through both of those programs for you. So for surveillance testing, I'll do that first because you're very familiar with this. It is required for unvaccinated or partially vaccinated employees. There are three options currently for employees to do that weekly surveillance testing, and that is Premier Medical Group, or PMG. You'll be hearing about them a lot, and I believe they're on this call with us. They have on-site testing at Bonifacio right now for that. The Vault Home Health at-home testing, and the curative testing at the DOH sites. And I believe that PMG is actually now doing some testing at one of the DOH sites in Albuquerque. It's recommended for unvaccinated or partially vaccinated students, and that will be through Premier Medical Group. And so it is weekly for both of those groups. For students to test, parents must opt them in. Employees, it is required. So you all have identified in the schools a point of contact, and that point of contact will be working on both of the testing programs, the surveillance testing as well as the test to stay program. So for surveillance testing, they will have to determine, in conjunction with the school administrator, if it's not the school administrator, that's the point of contact, the time, the day of the week that testing will occur for the surveillance testing. And you'll be working with PMG to, once that's determined, they will be on your site. If you have individuals that are part of the surveillance testing on that date and time to do the testing. So the point of contact will have to have communication with PMG about that, and then any changes that might occur. So let's say they're supposed to be there on Wednesday and the school's now in lockdown at the time. The point of contact should communicate immediately with PMG that it would have to be rescheduled because they can't come on campus. So they'll be developing and communicating the process for releasing students and employees. So when that testing happens, what will be the process for having them come to actually get the test? Now, this is the surveillance testing we're talking about. That is the PCR test that will happen, and it's a pull testing.
At the bottom. That's just what I heard. That
If
might
you're
be
not
something.
on mute, please
No,
put yourself
yeah,
on mute.
just exit out of it.
And they will be assisting with the testing registration as needed for parents. So the registration is online, but there are some parents that won't have that ability. So we will have registration packets that you hard copy that you can give to parents, and they can fill them out and send them with their child. Once a family registers with PMG, they're registered. They don't have to do it every time. So it's a one-time registration process. What PMG will do during this time, they will provide the list of enrolled students to you because they are registering through PMG. They'll arrive on site as needed for the testing. They'll set up in the designated area that you've given them to set up in, and they provide all of the supplies that are needed. The school will need to provide some tables, those types of things for them, but they will clean and disinfect when they're done. And PMG will send the results to the point of contact for the students, the nurse or principal, whichever you decide. And we have a new email. You're going to see this throughout. It's ts2@aps.edu. So this is the email for all of the testing programs. So test to stay. This is the one you're all here really to learn more about. So this is required. We are required by both public health order and PED rule to do the test to stay program in all of our schools. That's why we have identified points of contacts in every school, and we will be paying differentials to those points of contact because this is additional work. Again, what this does is allows for asymptomatic, so people without symptoms that are unvaccinated and partially vaccinated that have been identified as a close contact in the school setting. You're gonna hear that from me over and over again. They have to have been identified as a close contact in the school or district setting. So if I'm at Thanksgiving and my uncle Roy gets COVID and I'm a close contact, I am not eligible for this program. I've been identified as a close contact in the community setting. So it has to be within the school setting. And what it does, it will allow them to participate in in-person learning. Students can ride the bus. They can participate in related school activities, which includes athletics, before and after school programs, childcare programs that are on our campuses, all of those things. However, and this, I can't say this enough, it doesn't remove the quarantine outside of the school. So if I'm in the test to stay program, that doesn't mean when I go home, I can now go to my friend Lindsay's house after school. I'm quarantined at home for the 10 days of the quarantine. I'm only allowed in the school and school-related activities during that time if I meet all of the eligibility requirements and I continue to test negative. So what is the eligibility? So for test to stay, again, it is only available for those individuals who are exposed to COVID-19 in the school or district setting. Anyone with exposure to COVID-19 in the household or community setting is prohibited from this program. And I'm already getting questions on that, and you will get questions on that. So no, it has to be within the school setting. Parents and guardians and employers must register with PMG. It's the only way to do the program. They must do it. Parents can opt in. Employees that are unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, have to participate, so they will have to register. So how does it work? So when the school has a COVID-19 positive case, they already begin to identify the close contacts. So that will continue as is. That close contact list will be used by the point of contact to send a communication to the eligible close contacts, explaining the test to stay program. And there is a letter, we've done a protocol for you, and you'll be getting that very shortly. The protocol and all of the other information, the forms, everything. So the parent or guardian employee registers with PMG, and then the letter actually tells them that, so the day that they're identified as the COVID positive, that's day 0. The next day is the first day of quarantine. So that's day 1. They can send their child to school. The employee shows up at school as long as they've registered with PMG. And the point of contact is going to fill out some pretty simple forms, and PMG is going to be getting those forms every night. They'll know which schools they need to go to the next day to do the testing. So the point of contacts will put in that information into a template and an upload Google form. And all of the links will be found at this site right here, and that is going to be sent to you. Again, with the protocol, it's in the protocol. We have an intranet site for all of this information, and all of the links will be there. So in that intranet site, I'm actually going to take you through this so that you can see what it looks like, but I'm going to talk you through it, then I'm going to show you how to do it. So you go to that intranet site, you scroll down, and they're about 2/3 of the way down on that site. It's all about the testing program. So there's information in there. There's a section called for points of contact / district supervisors only. Underneath that section is downloadable stuff. So the first thing is a template that you can download, and in the protocol, it gives you information about how to fill that out. If that template is filled out correctly without mistakes, and that can be filled out by the point of contact or the person who's doing close contact tracing for your school, then that's the same template that's uploaded in the PED report. Point of contacts aren't doing the PED report unless the principal is and they're the point of contact. But who's ever doing the PED report can use this exact same document to upload into the PED report for the close contact, so you don't have to type them in twice. Worked very closely with the public education department to make sure that this would work. So you fill out that template. There's also a test to stay request form, very simple. It's a Google form. You upload that template into the Google form, and that goes into a Google Doc that PMG will have access to. That's the doc that they're going to use to determine what schools they need to be at the next day. So I'm gonna stop sharing this piece so I can bring up that piece on the intranet for you. I'm hoping I'm picking the right thing. Nope, I didn't, of course. Go back. Okay. I lose that. All right, I'm not frozen, am I?
Yeah.
Okay. can't get to my share thing.
Until we get the results. To the test, they will wait ends.
Okay. I apologize. I'm having a little personal technical difficulties here. Okay, let me stop sharing and reshare. Okay. Okay, you should be seeing this employee intranet. Are you all seeing that? Okay, so this is where you go. It's actually intranet.aps.edu/new/test to stay. You will get that in the protocol that's coming out to you today. That link will be there. So you scroll down about 2/3 of the way down, and there's a section here. I think this is the, okay. All right, I'm giving you the wrong one. I thought I had closed everything I didn't need. All right, I can't get to it. I don't want to hold up your time for this, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so you'll go here, it will take you to these forms, and they're pretty simple. It's a Google form and the upload template. So it's pretty easy to see. In the upload template, the only thing that and there's instructions in the protocol for you all. So it'll be easy to understand. You know that close contacts that are fully vaccinated or close contacts that have had COVID in the last 90 days do not have to quarantine, but you do have to report those to PET. So what we ask is that you just put those names in red font in the template form. Those are close contacts that do not have to participate in test to stay to be in school. So when PNG, after they get the form, they'll arrive at the school the next day to start the testing for any close contacts in your school. The point of contact will release, PMG will let you know what time they're going to be at your school. You'll need to release the students, and if you have some staff at that time, to go to test. And this is a rapid response test. So it's not the PCR test that we're doing in test to stay. The results come back fairly quickly, within a few minutes. And like, I think it's 10, PMG will be able to answer that in a little bit, how long that takes. If the test is negative, they go back to class or to work or to wherever they're going. And they get to stay for that day and the next day. And then on day 3, they'll get tested again. If it continues to test negative, they get to stay. If at any point there is a positive test or they become symptomatic, you need to isolate them immediately, and they need to go home and finish out the quarantine at home. And it's recommended for students, it's required for employees to get a PCR test at that
Hey,
point.
Chris,
Yes,
Chris, this is Scott.
yes.
Do me a favor, go back. And just first off, whoever is 049408, you're not muted. Also, please repeat the part about the red font not being tested.
Okay,
Repeat
so,
the 0135 process.
okay. So in this upload, sorry, in this test to stay upload template, It asks for, it's the same template that PED uses. It asks for the role, which is either student or staff, and then their names, that type of thing. You have to put in there all close contacts of the COVID positive, regardless of their vaccination status. If the person is a close contact and they are fully vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine. So they do not need to participate in test to stay. If the close contact has had COVID in the last 90 days, they do not quarantine and they do not have to participate in test to stay. So you're already doing that for the PED report on your close contacts. So in this form, that's all we ask is that you put those names. So if Chris Muir was a close contact, she's fully vaccinated, you would put my name in there because PED needs to know that I was a close contact, but my name goes in red, which tells PMG Chris Muir is not part of the test to stay program. But if Chris Muir is not vaccinated, fully vaccinated, I haven't had COVID in the last 90 days, my name just stays in black, which means I'm part of the test to stay program. If I come to school the next day, PMG will be there. My parents opted me in. PMG will be there and I will get tested. If I test negative, I can stay. If I test positive, I have to go home and isolate for 10 days. And I should get a PCR test to confirm the rapid response positive. So again, P&G is going to be looking at that. They'll contact the point of contact saying, you have some test to stays tomorrow. We will be at your school at 9 o'clock. And when they show up, the point of contact calls them out of class. They should have gotten the letter, so they know that they're a close contact that needs to be part of this program. They come out, they get tested, and if they're negative, they get to stay. If they're positive, they have to basically go home, go into the isolation room like you would with any positive. Also, if they're positive, you now have to follow, the school has to follow the rapid response for a positive case. So you've just identified a new positive in your school. So also on that, and I know some of the points of contact are not necessarily part of the rapid response, and they may or may not be that, working that, but we're putting the rapid response checklist on that same website so that you can work through that. You'll know what that process is if a positive is identified. So there can be a delay, and those of you that have been at the 1 o'clock meetings, you understand this very much. I didn't hear about it till 3 days later, even though they tested positive on Monday and now it's Wednesday and now I've heard about it. If there is a delay in notification of the exposure, so you start doing that close contact tracing, the testing sequence will begin on the first day in which the principal or the nurse, whoever in your school, is notified of the exposure. So day 1 of testing will start on that next day of your notification instead of missing day 1 of the actual quarantine time. Even though you're counting the quarantine time for those 10 days, the testing will start. Their day 1 testing will start, and they may not get all 3 tests in. So for example, I'll try to give an example. I'm a close contact as of Monday, and it's already Tuesday. I missed out on my day 1 of quarantine. So but I would start my quarantine today. I can come to school tomorrow if my parents opted me in and start my testing sequence tomorrow. So it's whatever day that you find out about it. So it would start it. And we do have those delays. When a test falls on a day that a school is off or offices are closed, or the person that's supposed to test is absent, then they must test the next day or the day that they come back. So their sequence will start on that day. So if they're not there, if a person is there and they've signed up, they've opted in, and they fail to test. So I'm supposed to test tomorrow. I'm here tomorrow, but I don't go get my test. I'm done with the test to stay program, and I have to finish my quarantine at home. If a participant experiences or exhibits symptoms, then that also terminates their test to stay program, and they go into quarantine until they have a PCR test that shows that they're negative. They could come back at that point. Again, if they're fully vaccinated or if they've tested positive in the last 90 days, this is not different than the way it's always been. They do not have to quarantine, so they are not part of the test to stay program. Close contact students, their parents and guardians and employees should also be monitoring for symptoms. If at any point they become symptomatic, they should stay home and get a PCR test. So this doesn't negate symptomatic people. Close contacts have to remain asymptomatic to continue to attend school or work.
Hey, Chris, this is Troy.
Mhm.
There's a few questions in the chat box. Do you want me to monitor those for you, or are you gonna just hit all those at the end, or what are you gonna do as far as chat stuff?
Chris Sanchez said that he would monitor the chat, and we'll be taking questions in a little bit.
Okay, perfect. We'll wait a little bit and then we'll go from there.
So
Continue
close contacts need to be aware of the process. And there are letters in the protocol, and that you will be sending to them that help them understand the process a little bit. We are also getting the parent letter translated. So hopefully by the time this kicks off, we will at least have the Spanish translation and then also some other languages for you. But as we get them, we will add them to that intranet site for you. So the point of contact's responsibilities for the test to stay. A lot of it is the same as their responsibilities for surveillance testing. So they coordinate with PMG, this program. PMG is going to be getting all of the points of contacts, names and emails today. I'm going to be sending them to them. They should be reaching out to you as the point of contact to start that conversation. They will have to fill out those 2 forms, which is both fairly easy. If your nurse or principal, whoever in your school does the reporting for PED, is already filling out that form, you can use the form that they fill out, but make sure that they understand that the vaccinated and the 90 days out should be in red font. So if you are not, you're the point of contact and you're not that person, you need to work with that person to make sure you get the correct list of the close contacts. We're not asking points of contacts to do close contact tracing unless that's already your job. So I know some of you, that's already your job. But if it's not, work with the person in your school that is their job. By uploading that and hitting submit on that form, you will have, PMG will then have access to your information. You're going to be communicating with PMG if there's any changes. So if they're supposed to show up to do the test to stay program tomorrow, and the time that they said they were going to come, your school ended up on lockdown, you need to let them know that we're on lockdown. And if need be, because of those kinds of situations, it would be, day one would be bumped to the next day of the testing program. So, but the point of contact and PMG need to be in communication with each other. The point of contact will be the one sending the communication to the families of eligible students and to your eligible employees on your campus. If you have employees on your campus that are district level employees, you are not necessarily responsible for them unless they're there every day. The district supervisors will be taking care of their district employees that are close contacts. But if they're there on your campus, they can test on your campus. Assist with testing registration for the families as needed. Again, if they have to use the paper forms, which we will be getting to you, then you can give them the paper forms to fill out. Ensure that PMG has what they need in whatever space that they're going to be doing the testing in. You'll be coordinating with them as the point of contact that. And also communicate with PMG if there's any special needs that you have on your site, specific special needs. Again, PMG's responsibilities are very much the same. They will be providing the list of enrolled students and employees to the school. They'll arrive on site with the supplies that they need, set up in the area that you have them set up in, determine if any special needs are happening. They'll perform this is now the rapid response test versus the pull testing they'll be doing for surveillance testing. And just so you know, if you have an employee that is required to do surveillance testing and they're also part of test to stay, the test to stay testing, okay, say that 5 times fast, Chris, will count as their surveillance testing for that week. They don't have to do both. Again, they'll clean and disinfect and they'll send the results to you. These results you're going to need fairly quickly because you're going to have to make a determination based on those results in the testing program on who gets to stay and who has to go home. So a positive test sends them home, a negative test, they get to stay. Do we have someone from PMG here in the room? Thought that Tom was joining us. You could unmute. All right, I'm not seeing him. So I do know that we're going to have some office hours during iLeads and I'll make sure PMG is there to answer some of your questions. What we're getting from PMG is but they will notify the point of contact. How will you communicate with them? Who will be your outreach at PMG? So each point of contact may have a different outreach person. And I think that they're going to have specific people assigned to each zone. At least that was our last communication with them. So now we're ready. I want you to notice this and write it down. T2, the number 2, S at aps.edu. Please use that as your communication email, because if you send it to Chris Muir, it's going to get lost in my emails. So T2S at aps.edu for questions, concerns, and this will be also the email that PMG will be using to send us results. This is the COVID response team. And at this point, we'll start with questions that came in the chat. And then if people want to unmute, they can also unmute to ask questions. So Chris, you want to take me through some of these?
Before anybody unmutes, just please, let's start with putting all your questions in the chat, and I'll try to monitor it as best as I can. So please don't unmute just yet. Just put your questions in the chat. So our first question, Dr. Muir from Kimberly Crabtree, has fully vaccinated determination changed for adults with the booster?
No, that's an easy one. No, it has not. Although we are going to be asked to let PED know how many have gotten boosters, it doesn't change fully vaccination status. So it's still based on the 2 shots of Pfizer or Moderna or the 1 shot of J&J for vaccination status.
Easy enough. Thank you. Can we get a copy of the slide deck?
Yes, that will also be on this in the website. So the slide deck will be there. And I think I can put the recording there too. So we're recording this and the recording will also be there, as well as the protocol and the rapid response document that will all be on that one website that I couldn't seem to manage to share with you all.
Thank you. And from Jerry Lafer, what if a fully vaccinated staff member is a close contact in the school and wants to be tested? Can they test from PMG?
Yes. They can test from PMG, but they're not required to test to stay.
Perfect. From Heidi Dudley, how do we enforce the at-home quarantine if they choose to go out? Does that mean when we begin their quarantine out of school?
We can't enforce it. That's just, it's that simple. I actually was on the phone with the Department of Health for an hour yesterday, and this was one of the things we talked about. And we cannot make people do things outside of our schools. So we can highly, recommend it. We continue to say, this is what test to stay means. You're supposed to quarantine outside. But if they're not quarantining outside of the school and they come back in to test to stay and they test positive, then they're out of the program anyway. The whole idea is, and I did ask some questions about this, why, kind of thing. It's partly because the school is a cohorted, controlled environment. So we can only control what we can control. We are not being asked to be the COVID police.
From Shannon Dixon, if a close contact occurs outside of school, may families choose to test their children on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th day at an outside entity to return to school?
No, they cannot. So if the close contact, so what I didn't tell you at the beginning is that this program, we're working with Department of Health, Public Education Department, and the Centers for Disease Control. The Centers for Disease Control has not actually officially condoned this program, but it is happening in a handful of states across the globe, across the United States, and they are looking at the results, what's happening in these programs. If it works, they will then condone this program and do those kinds of things. But I think that's part of the reason that we cannot look at close contacts outside of the school setting. So it's only close contacts that are identified because of a positive case that you have in your school, and you've identified those close contacts from that positive case in the school setting. So I've already gotten questions from parents and some others. We cannot allow close contacts outside of the school setting to be part of this program. They will have to quarantine for the full 10 days outside of the school setting.
Next question. After they test, do they wait at school or do we send them home until we get the results?
They wait at school. It's about 10 minutes.
From Jerry Lafer. Oh, that was, never mind. From Anna Chavez, kids who have not opted in, they stay out the 10 days as a close contact, correct?
That is correct. If the parents did not opt them in, and when they fill out that PMG site, they give their personal information, and there's a consent form. They're consenting to both test to stay and surveillance testing in one form, and it's a one-time consent. They can always go back in and remove their consent, and PMG will know that. So when they come, there's either a barcode that they can scan, or they can look up the student, and if they're not in their database with the consent, they're going to have to go home. They can't stay. They're not consented to test.
From Heidi Dudley, if a student tests positive on day 3 or day 5, does their 10-day start from that positive test day or from their initial close contact day?
The 10 days would be an isolation 10 days from the date of the positive test. They would be asked to take within 48 hours, just like, think about this. You have right now, without test to stay, you've got a parent that told you that I did an at-home PCR rapid response test, it's positive. You ask that parent to get a PCR test within 48 hours to confirm it. If they don't get the PCR test, you go with the rapid response. If they get the PCR test and it tests negative, then that takes over that rapid response. They're now negative. They could come back. So you treat them just like you would any positive case in your school that was a rapid response PCR positive. They start isolation, and you're going to have to do close contacts for that positive case.
From Diane Thomas, can families preemptively register their students, or does that appear to PMG as a next day test to stay?
We actually sent a letter home on Friday to parents through the district, and they can start registering now. They can register at any time. So we're hoping people will go in and start registering now so that when they get the letter, they don't have to hustle to register to send their kid to school the next day. But they can start registering at any time.
Do kids still go home on day 0 and return on day 1 for testing?
No. Day 0 would be the day that you've identified them as a close contact. You would send home that letter with them saying, you've been identified as a close contact. You can test to stay, and this is the process to do that. So they don't have to go home on day 0.
From Lisa Gutierrez, do they also go home and quarantine if they begin to have symptoms?
Yes. If they have symptoms, they go home and finish the quarantine time at home. It wouldn't add to their quarantine, but they would need to finish the 10-day quarantine at home.
If they get a rapid test and it's positive and they go home and get a PCR test and it comes back negative, can they return to school?
Yes. The PCR test within 48 hours of the positive, it has to be within 48 hours of that positive rapid response, will negate the rapid response.
From Anna Sanchez, what is the time deadline for parents to opt in on day 0? Is it like 5 p.m. or something?
They can opt in at any time. And if for some reason they're not there, the parent's telling you they opted in, then you work with PMG to say, why isn't it showing up on your database? Because it's going to be on PMG's database, not ours. But you can work with PMG if the family's saying, I opted them in, they should get an email back with a QR code once they've opted in. And that's the code that PMG scans to say, they can look it up. The kid doesn't have to bring it with them. But that's a QR code that says, this is Chris Muir. She's in the system.
From Lisa Gutierrez, can letters that are sent to close contacts in program be emailed to families?
Yes. You can get them there any way that you can get them there.
From Jessica Mackey, will we know which parents have not registered with PMG after being identified as a close contact?
PMG can let you know that. So they will communicate with the point of contact. They may not know when they show up the next day, but that day they'll know that all these people that you had on your list, we don't have them registered. but they can let the point of contact know that.
From tutor, will PMG be on campus every day for surveillance testing?
They will be on your campus 1 day a week for surveillance testing.
Do we submit the forms to test to stay at aps.edu email?
No, the form will be part of that Google Doc that I couldn't get you to the site to show you, but it's a Google form. And the template is you'll download that template and it's a spreadsheet. And then you upload that template into the Google form. And when you hit submit, it goes to a Google Drive. So you don't need to send anything to t2s@aps.edu except for questions that you have. That you don't need to do anything with that email yourself. PMG will give us the results in that email.
From Lisa Gutierrez, day 1 and day 3, etc., could be different for each group of close contacts. Does this mean PMG will be on site daily if needed?
Absolutely. That's what they told us. So we're going to find out if they can meet our need, but that's the idea. So if I have 5 close contacts today because of this one positive, and then tomorrow I have another positive and I've got 3, they will be there each of those days that they need to be there.
From Diane Thomas, how should we advise parents, guardians who wish for a vaccinated close contact to participate in test to stay? Should we say out of an abundance of caution or concern?
If you have a parent that really wants their child to participate in test to stay, that's all they'll have to do is register with PMG. And then let the point of contact or principal, whoever, know that I want my child to be called out for the testing.
From Bernadette Chavez, will we have documentation of those employees or students that are fully vaccinated or have opted in to test to stay?
So the opt-in you'll get from PMG for this, for the students, in terms of who's fully vaccinated, nurses can look that up in NIMSIA for you. That's what they're doing right now when there's close contacts. They're looking up to say this close contact is fully vaccinated so they don't have to quarantine. So they're identifying, really test to stay are for those identified as close contacts that would otherwise quarantine. For staff, there's already a list based on that survey that went out. Just so you know, and it's a heads up, we're going to be doing it again because now we're being required, we will be required by OSHA to actually have proof of vaccination of staff. And so it's going to happen again, and we'll have to have staff actually upload somehow their vaccination cards. So we have proof of vaccination of staff. For students, you can get the proof. Your nurses can look them up in NIMSIA, which I believe they are doing for close contacts now to determine whether they have to quarantine.
From Shannon Dixon, if PMG is on site and we have a student that is exhibiting symptoms, may families ask to have their child tested? Or do students with symptoms need to go test elsewhere and then provide us with the results?
Say that again. I didn't quite understand the question.
If PMG is on site and we have a student that is exhibiting symptoms, may families ask to have their child tested by PMG? Or do students with symptoms need to go test elsewhere and then provide us with the result?
They will need to go to, like they've been doing. So you have someone in the isolation room, this is how I'm hearing the question, that's symptomatic, and the family, you want them to go get tested, they can still go to Bonifacio for that. They should not test on site, even though PMG might be there. They may not have the right test for you there. If they're doing the test to stay, it's going to be rapid response. When they go to Bonifacio, it's the PCR test.
If someone tests positive on the test to stay, do we start the contact tracing all over again?
Yes, for that positive. You continue with the, so this one, this group, I'm using my fingers as people. So here's your positive and here's all your close contacts. And now you do the test to stay, and this one showed up positive. You do close contact tracing for this one now. And that starts anew, but these continue on those other 4 will continue on where they were.
If an employee has to do surveillance testing, can they do tests to stay weekly at their school site?
No. If they have to do surveillance testing, they participate in surveillance testing. If they've been identified as a close contact and are doing the test, the required test to stay, because it's required for them, they don't have to surveillance test that week. That will count for them.
From
But
Aaron
if they weren't
Northern,
identified as a close contact, they just do their regular surveillance testing.
from Aaron Northern, how will we know if a parent has opted in and completed the PMG registration?
PMG will be able to give you a list of that. So the points of contact, working with your PMG contact, can get that list from them.
From Susie Moore, do we include any long-term subs and APS contractors like our SLPs?
The sub-services will be doing their own. So you don't need to include them. However, if you've got a long-term sub in your school and they've been identified as a close contact, you certainly can include them when PMG comes on site. If they've been identified as a close contact and they're there in your school because they're long-term, you can have them test to stay during that time.
Do parents have to sign an approval form for testing?
When they sign up with PMG, there's a consent form in that app that they sign up for. It's an electronic signature and they only have to sign it once. So the answer is yes, but they do it through the PMG app.
From Holly Hargrove, if a student develops symptoms during their test to stay period, will they still have the option of testing before they leave campus that day?
If they're symptomatic and it's their day to test,
Yes,
they could test on that day, but they really should be put in isolation and sent home because they need a PCR test, not a rapid response test.
from Anthony Griego, what happens if we get contacted a week after they have tested positive?
Then you do it like you would now. If it's a week after, you look at those close contacts, you know you've already been a week into their quarantine, but day 1 of the test to stay would be the next day, and they may not get 1, 3, and 5 just because the 10 days will be over.
What are the requirements for the testing room that PMG will be using? For example, do they need a restroom, running water, etc.?
No, they don't, there's really not, they can actually do it in a hallway. So that's why you're going to work individually with them for your site on what's going to work the best in your school, on where it may depend on how many close contacts you have on where you do it. If I know in some elementary schools, we've had the whole classroom have to, their close contacts, then maybe PMG would come to that classroom and do the testing right there. And then, so that's what the point of contact will do with PMG. It will be unique for every site. But there's no requirements. They don't need running water. It's like the same rapid response test kit that you would buy at Walgreens. It's the same type of kit. You don't need anything other than your nose.
Perfect. From Shannon Dixon, when waiting for PMG to arrive to do testing on the close contacts, may students stay within their classroom with all other non-close contact students?
Yes.
Will we get a list of who has opted in?
That was asked me to get that list, get it from PMG. They will have the list. So the point of contact working with your PMG contact can get that list.
What is PCR?
PCR, and do I have anybody from nursing services in here? I don't know exactly what it stands for, but it's the rapid response is a quick test, but the PCR actually has to go to a lab and then they do the actual testing on it. So it looks for more antigens and antibodies. The PCR is just a rapid antigen test where the rapid response is just an antigen test. PCR is an antibody test. So that's the difference between those two tests. And that's why a PCR test doesn't always show up positive if you test. That's why we tell close contacts to wait 5 days to do a PCR test, because the antibodies may not have shown yet.
From Deb Laribas, can principals get a copy of the letter that was sent to parents regarding registering for test to stay?
Yes, and I think it's on the website, so I'll have to look, but it's on the APS website, that letter.
From Anthony Griego, can we get a Reader's Digest version of test to stay so we can also send out with our parent update?
I can work on that. You're going to get the protocol, the full protocol, which is about 6 pages long. I wouldn't send that to parents. It's not a Reader's Digest version. It's really for the points of contacts and principals to understand the program. I think the letter that went out to parents sort of explains it a little bit.
I've tried to register my student for surveillance and test to stay, but it will only allow you to select one option. Are you not able to enroll in both programs?
Is that through PMG? Who asked that question?
E216983.
Hi, that would be me. I received the email. So as a parent, received the email, followed the directions. When it brings you to the site, it tells you, do you want to opt into test to stay or surveillance? It won't let you select both. So I was wondering, does that mean that parents have to pick between one program or the other?
They shouldn't, and that's a thank you, because I'm collecting glitches. That's my first glitch, and I will talk to PMG about that. They're supposed to opt into both at the same time, not a choice of one or the other. Thank you. I'll look into that.
Okay, from Jenna. Can a high school student register themselves, or do they have to create the account under their parent and then add companions?
The parents have to do the registration because it's a consent. They're still minors.
What if they're 18?
If they're 18, I would assume they could register themselves, but if their parents are signing off on everything else, FERPA, they should register them for this too.
If a child tests positive and the parent refuses to have the child stay home to quarantine, what do we do?
The same thing that you would do right now. If you've got a kid that's positive and they show up at school, you put them in isolation and you call the parents and tell them to come pick them up. They cannot stay in school if they're positive.
If a close contact occurs at 10 a.m., they stay that day. If parent opts in on that day or the next day, how long will it take to ID that they are now in the program?
It should be immediate. Again, that's a PMG question, but if I fill out that form from PMG, it goes to them and they get that list immediately. It's a web-based form, so.
From Mark Woodard, after day 5, the student who has tested negative may stay at school for the remaining 5 days of quarantine, correct?
Correct.
If they remain asymptomatic.
As long as they're asymptomatic, they can remain at school for the rest of their quarantine, yes.
If PMG is only on campus 1 day a week, how will the student test on the 3rd and 5th day? Did you mean to say they will be on campus as needed by school site?
So the first question I got was how many days will PMG be on site for surveillance testing? That's 1 day a week. For test to stay, they will be on your campus for every day that they need to test for the program.
From Kimberly Fink, what is the anticipated start date of this program?
December 1st.
From Nathan, I'm not going to try your last name, Nathan. If day 3 or 5 lands on the weekend, will they test on the following Monday?
Yes, the first day back of the testing sequence is when, so you got day 1 on Friday or whatever, Thursday, then Monday would become day 3 of the sequence of testing.
Mary Herrera, on day 1, if a parent does not sign the test to stay form, do we quarantine the student for the remaining 10 days or 9 days?
If the parents have not signed the form and they have not opted in, they have to quarantine.
From Heidi Dudley, if a staff member who is unvaccinated or partially vaccinated is identified as a close contact and they don't want to participate in test to stay, will APS still provide the paid leave of absence?
We are requiring employees to participate in test to stay. If they refuse to participate, you need to work with your HR staffer on what to do in terms of consequences for them.
All right, so this one's an actually pretty good one. From Anna Sanchez, if a student is on day 3 and is a close contact to another positive at school, do they start day 1 over?
Yes, if they have been identified as a second close contact, then the sequence starts over for that timing.
From Nathan, poly chain reaction. And that's the question. Nathan, you want to elaborate? 3, 2, 1.
Oh,
It's PCR, Chris.
Okay,
yeah, and it's polymerase, but yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
From Susie Moore. If I have 2 children at 2 different APS schools and one child is a close contact at one school, can I have the other child get tested at the other school?
See if I can say it again, see if I can figure this out in my head. You've got 2 children
At 2 different APS schools.
and they're
And
both identified as close contacts?
Just one.
Oh, only the close contacts has to test to stay. Close contacts of close contacts do not have to test to stay. The other student doesn't have to.
From Shannon Dixon, why are we only testing on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th day? We have had students that begin to exhibit symptoms on day 10. Plus, when families ask if they should test their close contact child, we recommend families wait 5 days from the last exposure.
So this testing is a rapid response test, so it's not the PCR test. And this is the sequence that is recommended by CDC and is what's been happening in other states in terms of this program. So that's Department of Health and PED determined those dates.
From Jessica Calhoun, what if a parent does want to opt into test to stay, but not surveillance?
If they only want to do one and not the other, then they will need to notify the school of that.
From Nora's iPhone, when does this program end?
Don't know. When will COVID be over? We're hoping that this will be a successful program. And if it is this school year, then it may be in play again next fall. It's all going to depend on this virus and our restrictions that we're under. But I believe it will at least go through the rest of this semester and the rest of the school year.
From Dana Lee, what if a family doesn't opt in for a few days, but still has days left in quarantine? Can they begin 135 testing once they opt in, even if they don't do it right away?
Yes, but they can't come to school until they do opt in. So if I decide not to have my child do it, then my kid's in quarantine, and then 3 days into quarantine, I go, you know what? I really want Chris to go back to school. Then I can opt in, and then that day the next day that I come to school is my first day of test to stay. But the point of contact will need to know that so they can communicate with PMG.
From Jessica's iPhone, if a student or staff member tests positive on the test to stay program, would they be able to get the PCR through PMG since they offer it for surveillance testing?
They can, but probably not there on site that day. PMG probably will not have the testing there. They will have to go to Bonifacio for that test.
So Dr. Muir, that concludes the questions in the chat. Oh, nope, we have one more, Dr. Muir, from Janet Dorado. How will the point of contact know when students opt in days after the close contact?
You'll have to work with PMG to know that. So that's why the point of contact, it has to be in good communication with their PMG contact.
Dr. Muir, that's all the questions in the chat.
Okay, there was one that just came in. If a parent opt in on paper, how do we get the info to PMG? You just hand PMG the paper when they come. That's all you'll need to do is hand them the paperwork that the parent gave you.
We got one from Rita Martinez. Are there any survey map templates available?
Survey for,
Rita Martinez, you want to elaborate?
It's actually Monique, the school nurse. I was wondering if you have any templates we can use and change according to the school layout so we can map where the close contacts have been.
if you need a map of your school, go through Karen Alared and those folks, and they have maps.
Yeah,
of schools.
Chris, let me work on that one.
Okay.
I'll forward that to
I
operations.
was thinking of using the fire map for now, the fire escape map, but I didn't know if you had a working template we can use.
I don't think we have an electronic template that you can hop to. It would probably have to be, it's probably gonna be paper.
Okay, thank you.
From Jamie Eicher, when will we know who our PMG person will be?
I'm hoping that right after Thanksgiving, will hear from PMG. I'm sending them the points of contacts today, so I'm hoping that they're going to reach out very soon.
So I think what I'll do now is, Dr. Muir, hand it over to you. It looks like the chat has kind of slowed.
Okay, so again, t2s@aps.edu if you have additional questions. We'll get all of the information to you before the end of the day today, so you can look at it. The program will not start till December 1st. So I know we're going to get a bunch of positives, but they're not going to be actually in the school setting right after Thanksgiving. Those will be community spreads. And so just, you probably won't have a lot of close contacts off of them because they wouldn't have been in school all week. If you have issues that you're experiencing as we start to roll this out, please email that email so that we can look at them and fix them as we go. We did as many what ifs as we could in designing this program, but we can't, we won't know till we actually start implementing it where the glitches are and where you run into problems. If you're running into problems with PMG, let me know immediately so that I can contact them and figure out what's going on. So the question on community spread will follow the same protocol. No, community spread, we do not do test to stay for.
And Dr. Muir, I'll keep going with the monitoring this chat for you.
Okay.
So from Amanda St. John, does our PMG contact remain the same?
I don't know. That will, PMG will contact the point of contact, and that's a question for them.
From Cassandra Gonzalez. As the point of contact, are we responsible for keeping track of staff surveillance testing, or do they continue doing what they have done before?
So when the staff are surveillance tested, they have to send their results to their supervisor. So if you're the point of contact and you're their supervisor, then yes. If you're the point of contact and you're not their supervisor, then no, you don't need to keep track of that.
From Holly Hargrove, can close contacts identified early next week before December 1st come back to test once PMG gets here?
If they're still on quarantine,
Holly, you want to go a little deeper on that? Holly Hargrove?
Yeah, so if Monday we have close contacts that we need to send home because they're unvaxxed and we don't have the option to test to stay quite yet, but later in the week that PMG shows up, can those kids we sent home for those first couple of days? It's just, this is just a question for the transition week of it.
yeah,
getting-
yes, they can. So if the close contact is identified as in the school setting, not outside of the school setting, on Monday, or let's say Tuesday. So you had a positive on Tuesday and they're back in school. They would quarantine, but we can start on the 1st. Then their sequence would start on the 1st then. We're trying to get as much in-person learning as possible. So yes.
So community spreads will follow the same protocol.
And I did answer that no, we don't follow this protocol for community spread, only for close contacts identified in the school setting.
From Janet Hurado, if a student is in close contact during school, then they would fit the criteria, correct?
Yes, so I have a positive case and the close contact is because I was close to that, the person was close to them in the school setting, then they qualify.
From Heather Hind. Hello, just as a heads up, I have heard from others in Alamo. The release form asks parents about drawing blood. I know this is not what is happening, but parents and families are upset by this. Is this something on our form as well?
I don't think so. Our test has nothing to do with a blood test. It's a rapid response nasal swab. I'll check with PMG on that, so thank you. I'll check with them and make sure it's not in there. We don't need that kind of upheaval.
From Hannah Main, I'm not going to try your last name, Hannah. It wasn't on the form when I enrolled my kids. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Yeah, I think that in Alamogordo, they started without using PMG, and so it was a different company. But PMG doesn't do any blood draws at all. All of their testing is nasal swab.
Sorry, I got confused. What's surveillance testing for students?
Surveillance testing for students is exactly the same as surveillance testing for staff. It's just a weekly testing of students that are unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, and their parents opt them in. Has nothing to do with test to stay. And that is a PCR test. It's not the rapid response.
From Holly Hargrove, if a student doesn't want to test, is scared or refuses, we contact family and send home, I assume.
Correct. If they refuse to test on the day that they're supposed to test, they go home and they finish their quarantine at home.
Would the Q&A be sent to us? This is being recorded. So
This is being recorded, so you'll have access to the recording. I don't think anybody was writing down the answers to the questions, but I can go back and look at them and try to put some of them in writing too. I do have to start the next training at 3. So if you have additional questions.
Chris,
Yeah,
this is Julie. Do you want me to see? I don't know if I have presenting privileges. Do you want me to see? I found the page on the employee internet. Do you want me to see if I can share that?
sure, that'd be great.
Dr. Muir?
Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, if you want to give them a quick
Okay, so-
guide, we can
So
take them
scroll
through.
down, Julie. So where it says point of contacts for supervisors only. So that at the top, it says test to stay request form. And you click on that.
Well, we won't go all over there.
Yeah, but that's the Google form. And then you have the test to stay upload template. That's the spreadsheet. So the one below. Oh, good. They got it. That's why I couldn't get in. He was adding the stuff. Oh, bless his heart. So if you look at all of those forms below, then the APS programs protocols, the PDF is there. That's the protocol that I've been telling you about. And then the APS rapid response checklist for administrators and supervisors. That's if you get a positive, that's what they do. So Julie, can you copy that email site and put it in the chat?
Yes.
And so this is the site, the intranet site that all of the information is on that we just talked about. So go through that. And as you look through that, if you still have questions or additional questions, that's where you go. So Julie will put that in the chat for everyone. And if the PSSs can also copy that link and send it out to, and I'll send it to the listserv that I have for the points of contacts. So we'll get that. That's the intranet site. So you have to log into that site. If you've never logged into the intranet, it'll talk you through it. Put in your email and your password. So there it is.
I'm going to wrap things up for you because we've got the next group coming in at 3 and I know you need to have your break. Let me just say something to all of you, okay? It's complex. There's going to be glitches. Sometimes it's not going to work. They may run out of test kits. Things may happen. Here's what you do. The best you can. It's not your fault. You can't solve all the problems in the world. All you can do is your best. I don't know who you're waving at, Pink, but I'm waving back. So, relax. I know you're nervous. I know you want to do your best. You know, errors will happen. It's just, remember we all started this at the beginning there. It's just like, hey, show some grace. I will tell you this. I went to the legislature on Friday, and I talked at length with them about you're dumping all this stuff on us. What are you going to take off? And if you read Monday's paper, you heard Mimi Stewart talking about maybe putting a moratorium on some stuff. I'm going to keep pushing that message that this is a lot to ask for. It's a big push. It's not going to work perfectly, guys. I've heard of Pink, you're killing me. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're doing there, but it is really funny. I've heard other districts talking about days PMG walks in and says, we don't have kits. What are you gonna do? Nothing. You're just gonna keep doing the best you can. They'll be there the next day. Just make good decisions. Make decisions you think are smart. We're trying to keep kids in school. Keep that in mind. Guys, we'll get through this. Have a good Thanksgiving. Please rest. Do whatever brings you joy. And thank you, Chris. You did a great job getting through a whole lot of information rather quickly. Thank you, just for helping out.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And I'm thankful for all of you.
Christine, can we get a copy of your slides?
I will put the slides in that same internet site.
Thank you, because I need to read it, see it, digest it.
Got it.
Thank you.